All right, so today the topic is what should we and what shouldn't we say in public or on the MLS? So, what can we say and what shouldn't we say when we're doing advertising, when we're putting remarks on the MLS, we're posting stuff on social media. What should we and what shouldn't we be doing? So first and foremost, I want to talk about, so in my mind, when it comes to what we should say and what we shouldn't say, it kind of ends up being in two categories. Number one is is the agent community. So our fellow agents. The Code of Ethics prohibits us from talking disparagingly about another agent. So we can't criticize or talk disparagingly about another agent. That's an ethics violation. So, and sometimes we'll get asked that question when we go to a listing appointment or something like that. Somebody will say to us, well, hey, we're going to meet with so-and-so as well. What do you think about them? And so we got to be very careful when we're asked those kinds of questions. And we also got to be careful when we're talking about our competitors in a competitive situation, in a listing appointment or with a buyer. And we know that they're going to be talking with those agents as well. So we got to be really careful that we're not talking disparagingly about them, because we could find ourselves in an ethics violation. So I just want to be clear on that. Our recommendation to you is, rather than talk disparagingly about another agent, is focus on you. Make it about you. What are your strengths? What are you going to bring to the table? How do you do business differently than maybe this other agent? I know that in this market here where we're at here in Davis County, that often, I don't do a lot of real estate, but when I do real estate, it kind of sounds like it comes from a commercial, huh? But when I do real estate, I often go up against this particular agent, and it's very tempting to talk about the weaknesses of this other agent, because we do transactions together. She's on the buyer side or I'm on the buyer side, vice versa. And so we've done enough business over the 30 years that I've been in the business that we do kind of know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And it's really tempting to try to talk about that when you know you're in a competitive situation with that person. But rather than do that, focus on your strengths. And you could say something to the effect of, it's very common for agents to do this, or it's very common for agents to do that. But I don't do that. This is how I do my business. And focus on you and keep it in the realm of positive rather than going negative. If you do attack another person, that's often not well received by the recipient. So any questions on that? Okay, I know you guys aren't doing that.
Ken, this is
Awesome.
Jason.
Huh?
One thing just to keep in mind is, sometimes when sellers or buyers are asking you those questions, it's your response that's going to solidify your being able to work with them. If you're talking bad about another agent, as much as that in our mind we're thinking that they are getting some valuable information, a lot of times they're looking at it saying, yeah, I don't know if I want to work with you either, kind of a feel. So it goes both ways. I think the one we have to be most careful about is, when we're going up against a discounted brokerage. It's easy to talk down about a discounted brokerage and say, well, how are they making their money, or how are they doing this? Those are important conversations to have, but you just have to be careful that you're not directing it towards a specific company or a specific person.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Great point. I appreciate you mentioning that. Let's look at it like this. When you're going on a listing appointment, you're going on a first date, right? Or you're meeting with the buyer for the first time. You're going on a first date. And how appealing is it when you go on a date in the real world and you sit there over dinner and all you do is rip on your ex or rip on your ex's family? Do you think you're going to get a second date? No, no, you're not going to get a second date. So it's kind of the same thing in real estate. So, you know, you're being interviewed, you're being judged on how you will handle adversity, how you're going to handle difficult things, and how you're going to interact with them and interact with your fellow agents. And if you're going down that road of negativity, that's not going to bode well for you. So great point. Anyone else have a comment along that line? Okay, so we've talked about agents. We need to be careful when we're talking about other agents so we don't commit an ethics violation. The other thing that we need to be careful about when we're talking about when we're talking in the public, and the public remarks on the MLS are just that. That is going out to the public. Anybody who views that listing is going to see your public remarks. And so we got to be careful on what we're talking about in the public remarks, because there are protected classes in our society. The federal government in the Civil Rights Act of 1964 designated certain persons that are protected. And so let's talk about that for just a second. So the protected classes are gender, marital status, disability, pregnancy, and veteran status. So we've got to be careful when we're writing comments about our listings, both on the MLS and in social media, that we be careful that we don't say something that is going to be offensive to one of the protected classes, and that we're doing business that's in a way is offensive to the protected classes. And in the state of Utah, that has even been taken further, in that in the state of Utah, they've even strengthened that more by saying that gender identity is a protected class, sexual orientation, political ideology, and a military service as well. So those are protected classes. So
Hey, Tim.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just curious, I'd never really thought about the military status. I mean, I wouldn't, well, I guess, have you seen things where they just say, what would somebody say against veterans, I guess?
Well, the biggest problem with that, Keith, is that with the market being as strong as it is, we have been discriminating against veterans by saying that our sellers are not entertaining VA offers. So we're discriminating against veterans by saying, no, we're not interested in looking at VA offers. And there's reasoning behind that. We all know why that is, or why people are using that as a reason not to under acceptable financing. It's been very common in the last 2 years that sellers and listing agents are only doing cash and conventional on the acceptable forms of financing. And so with us saying that we're not accepting offers from a veteran, we're discriminating against the veteran status. So we've got to be very careful about that. So there's some food for thought on that.
I mean, in reality, you should you should never say we're not accepting. You should always take all the offers. I mean, that's what I would do anyway, but then I guess it's your choice after that, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's the seller's choice after that. But to say that we're not going to entertain offers from that class of people is discriminatory. So
thank you.
Thank you for the question. That's a great question. So our recommendation is to you that you tell your seller, we're going to publicly make the property available to all buyers, and then you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, have the choice to decide what offer it is you want to use. And so it becomes their personal choice at that point And we haven't discriminated against a particular class of person up front. So any other questions on that?
I don't have a question, but I have a comment. I think that when we're doing our listing presentation, that we need to really explain to people the federal fair housing laws and how, not only they're saying when they sign that they're not going to be discriminatory, and they may not even really understand what that means.
Yeah, and we say in our listing agreement and our buyer broker agreement that we're an equal opportunity company, and that we personally espouse to those values. The Code of Ethics also says the same thing, that we are not going to discriminate, that we are an equal opportunity housing company, and that we are an equal opportunity housing realtor. So, we swear to that code, so we should be upholding that. So if you've done that in the past, we're counseling with you not to do that. Make it available to all people, and then let the seller make their decision as to who they want to entertain. Some of the other areas, and this is really, it kind of blew my mind a little bit when I was having the conversation with the UAR legal counsel about what some of the issues in the past have been when it comes to public remarks. So one of the issues that came up is, for example, when agents list a studio apartment, often we're tempted to use the terminology great bachelor pad or perfect for a single user, bachelor pad, single user. Those are terminologies that are discriminatory relative to marital status. And so you got to be really careful about that. The most common one is family friendly. The home is a family friendly home. Who are we to say that the house is family friendly or the neighborhood is family friendly? I get it. I've used that terminology myself before in the past. And I said to the attorney for the UAR, I said, well, the reason why we say it's family friendly is that it has 4 bedrooms. There's a playground in the backyard. There's a swing set. There's lots of kids in the neighborhood. So it is family friendly. So there again, using those kind of terminologies are, about marital status. So we've got to be a little bit careful about that. The other common thing that we get here in this market is we'll see listings that will say something to the effect of within walking distance to a church or walking distance to church. Well, whose church? And I know, and let's face it, we're probably talking about the predominant religion when we're talking about that. But saying that it's close to church, that doesn't necessarily mean it's close to, someone else's church, or close to the temple, or close to the LDS temple. So we see those as positives in the market, and they probably are. But there again, we're kind of saying things that have a religious bias to them and can get you in trouble. There was a case in New Jersey a few years ago where a listing agent said that an apartment that was being a condo that was being sold was within walking distance of a synagogue. And there was a lawsuit brought against the listing agent and the seller because of that reference in the listing, that the condo was within walking distance of the synagogue. And it went to court, and it was found that in that particular case, the judge cited for the seller in that particular case because the synagogue was actually incorporated into the condo project. So it was part of the condo project. So in that case, it was found to be okay. So if, we just got to be careful when we're talking about protective classes and not putting terminology in there that, could be used against us. Fortunately, here in the state of Utah, we haven't had any cases, at least according to Craig at the UAR, about protected classes and public disclosure here in the state. And so, we've been pretty fortunate not to have that problem. But, times are changing and society is very litigious. And so we got to just make sure that we're protecting ourselves. So do you guys have any questions on what I've talked about so far?
There's a list of verbiage that you can go onto the NAR and actually see what's approved and not approved. I think that's where it is, NAR website.
Yeah, there is. There is on the NAR website. There is a approved language. Also on the MLS, if you go on the MLS and go up in the top right-hand corner and click on help, and then you go to policies and procedures, there's a 30-minute video on the MLS that talks about remarks and what we can and what we should and what we shouldn't be putting in the remarks as well. So there's that available on the MLS. There was another comment. Sorry, there were 2 or 3 of you talking at the same time.
I was just going to ask if familial status and married, can you say close to schools? Is it
Yes.
walking distance to schools?
Yes. Yep, because that's not mentioned in the protected class. So.
Okay,
Yep.
thank
you. Any other questions? Well, I think we've covered it for today. So just to recap, talking about public remarks, social advertising, MLS public remarks, when we're in a competitive situation with our fellow agents, we can't say anything that's disparaging about another agent. We should always keep our communication in the realm of positive when we're talking about our business and the industry in general. Focus on making yourself look better and your strengths rather than focusing on the weaknesses and shortcomings of other agents that you compete with, because it's going to backfire on you, just like Jason indicated. You are being interviewed. Consider it a first date. How would you behave on a first date? Would you talk about your ex on the first date? It's probably not a good idea. Or talk about your in-laws. It's just going to show that you function in the world of negativity rather than positivity. And people want to be surrounded with people who are positive and make the best out of a situation. And then when it comes to the protected class, gender, marital status, disability, pregnancy, veteran status, gender identity, sexual orientation, political ideology, and military service, we should be sensitive to those groups when we're marketing the property and writing comments about the property. So if there's no other questions or comments, then I think we're done for the day. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So next week, we won't have this call because it's Summit. Summit is next week. So we'll miss you guys next week. The following week on the 17th, we're going to be talking about lender issues. How we can help our buyers and the lender better get through the process of buying, getting through the loan process. So that's going to be our topic for the 17th, is ways that we can help the buying process. All right, guys, that's all I have. Thanks for being here. Thanks for your comments. Those were great comments and questions, and go out and have a wonderful day.